Imagine a liver cancer patient walking into a clinic today. Under traditional clinical guidelines, their prognosis might give them, about 30 months to live.
Right, which is already a tough reality.
Exactly. But what if an artificial intelligence could look at that exact same medical file, spot these hidden, complex patterns that human doctors just naturally miss, and recommend a personalized treatment path that extends their median survival to 51 months?
That is nearly 2 extra years of life.
Yeah, it's incredible. And it is not science fiction. That is the actual finding of a research paper published just this year. So welcome to the deep dive. You're joining us for a synthesized overview of exactly 22 recent cutting-edge papers that are quite literally drawing the map for the future of medical AI.
The sheer volume of innovation happening right now is, it's staggering.
Yeah.
Like if you tried to print out every medical AI paper published this year, you'd run out of physical archive space in a matter of months.
Oh, easily.
Keeping up can feel completely impossible.
Which is exactly why we're here. Our mission today is to cut through the dense academic jargon and, pull out the most critical, actionable insights for you. We are covering the entire spectrum here.
Okay.
Everything from the messy reality of hospital data infrastructure all the way down to AI systems that are designing proteins and writing their own scientific papers.
It's a huge range.
It really is. And I promise you, we are going to get through all this crucial information in a tight 15 to 17 minutes. We know your time is valuable, so we are keeping the pace moving. Okay, let's unpack this. So before AI can actually revolutionize healthcare, it obviously needs data.
Right, the foundation.
Exactly. But you can't just hand an AI raw hospital folders and expect magic. We have to start with paper 21.
Yes, paper 21. This is authored by Xin Chen, Donglang Xu, and their colleagues. And they tackle what they call the missing first step. Because, we usually assume medical data is already clean, neatly packaged, and just ready for an algorithm.
Right, like a neat spreadsheet.
Exactly. But real clinical data is incredibly messy. It's heterogeneous. You have handwritten clinician notes, high-resolution MRI JPEGs, unstructured PDFs from outside labs, all just dumped into one file.
And someone has to painstakingly teach the AI the difference between those formats, right? Like before it can even begin to diagnose a patient.
Yeah. So to test this, the authors of this paper built a benchmark called MDS Bench. They basically threw this raw, messy hospital data at the best vision language models available.
How did that go?
Well, the result was even the most advanced model they tested, which was Gemini 3 Flash, only achieved a 48.6% success rate in standardizing it.
Wait, really? It fails almost half the time?
Almost half the time, yeah. Just trying to parse the formatting. It proves that before we can get to sophisticated diagnostics, we really have to solve this basic data curation bottleneck.
Wow. Which means someone has to build a massive, perfectly curated data set to train these models on what medical data is actually supposed to look like. Which brings us to paper 5.
All right, paper 5. This one is authored by Han-Jae Kim, Dane Kim, and a very large team. They built MedPMC to solve this exact curation problem.
And it was a monumental undertaking, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. For paper 5, they didn't just casually scrape the internet. They took 6.1 million PubMed Central articles and meticulously curated 11 million high-fidelity image text pairs.
That's a lot of data.
It is. They were basically teaching the AI, hey, this specific text describes this specific part of an X-ray. And by forcing that high-quality alignment, they improved medical visual question answering by up to 16.9 percentage points.
Because fidelity matters, obviously. And taking that concept of unifying data to an almost absurd scale, we have paper 16.
Yeah, paper 16 is by Hanjin Seo, Haiyan Wang, and their team. They created the TheBioCollection. This is a 52.6 billion token corpus.
It's a billion with a B.
With the B. What they've done is unify completely disparate biological data-like chemical molecules, protein structures, genomic sequences, all into one cohesive pre-training framework for large language models.
It's essentially building a universal translator for biology. Like suddenly the AI can speak the language of a cell membrane and the language of a protein strand in the exact same breath. But wait, let's pause here. I have a major concern with all this massive data gathering.
Okay, what is it?
How do we protect patient privacy without crippling the AI? If we lock the patient data down in hospital vaults, the AI can't learn from it, right?
Yeah, that tension between privacy and utility is one of the biggest hurdles in the entire field right now. And to address it, we actually turned to paper 2.
Okay, paper 2.
Authored by Yunbin Mao, Xu Tian, and team. Paper 2 introduces 𝗵𝗽𝗶𝗵𝗵𝗵𝗵, which is a benchmark specifically for federated learning.
Remind me how federated learning works again.
So the way federated learning works is that the patient data never actually leaves the local hospital server. Instead, the AI model itself travels to the hospital, learns from the secure data there, and then only the knowledge, not the raw patient data, is sent back to the central server.
Oh, so the data stays completely decentralized.
Exactly. And 𝗵𝗽𝗆 tests how well this works across 12 critical human organs, measuring not just if the algorithm is accurate, but if it's actually running efficiently without leaking any private info.
That makes sense. But what about the images themselves? Can we just, scramble an X-ray so a human can't read it, but a computer still can? Let's look at paper 12.
Right. Paper 12 by Jason Rojas, 𝗬𝗲𝗲, and team, they explore exactly that. It's called Secure by Disguise Privacy Tech. They basically evaluated different ways to visually scramble medical images.
And did it work?
Well, they found that a technique called randomized multidimensional transformation, or RMT, balances security and utility quite well if the AI is just doing basic image classification. Like deciding, is there a tumor, yes or no?
But I'm guessing there's a catch when the tasks get more complex.
A very significant one, yeah. The authors found that when they used AES-based disguising, which is a very strong encryption standard, it severely impacted the image utility for something called dense semantic segmentation.
Okay, let's break that down. Dense semantic segmentation. What does that actually mean for a doctor?
So semantic segmentation is when the AI has to map the exact pixel-by-pixel boundaries of a tumor to tell the surgeon exactly where to cut.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and when you use AES to scramble the image, you destroy the spatial relationships between the pixels. The AI completely loses its ability to draw those critical boundaries. So scrambling works fine for simple categorization, but it breaks down completely when you need surgical precision.
Okay, so let's say we successfully navigate the privacy minefield.
Yeah.
Right? And we standardize the data. The next major hurdle is trust.
Definitely.
If an AI tells a doctor to amputate a limb or start a heavy round of chemo, how does the doctor know the AI isn't just hallucinating? We need a framework for safety. So let's transition to paper 6.
Good call. Paper 6 is authored by 𝗫𝗫𝗏, Sarah Zanone, and Bilal Ahmed, and they introduce a concept called alignment plausibility. What's fascinating here is how the authors argue that AI's safety shouldn't just be a software patch applied at the end of development. It really needs to mirror human clinical supervision.
Meaning we should train them like we train medical residents.
Exactly. Think about when a human resident is trained. There is value specification, where we teach them the ethics of care, followed by rigorous training. And crucially, there's continuous oversight by senior doctors to detect long-term drift or burnout.
Right.
The authors of this paper argue we have to demand the exact same structured, continuous demonstration of safety for AI, just ensuring its decision-making doesn't slowly drift toward harmful outputs over months of use.
But doctors also need to see the AI's thought process right now, like in the moment of diagnosis. If foundation models are notorious black boxes, how do we peek inside? That brings us to paper 18.
Yes. Paper 18 by Ji Huang, Pengfei Yin, and team. They built X-FEMR, which is a token-level explainable approach for electronic health records. This team essentially built a transformer-based surrogate model to reverse engineer the AI's logic.
Okay, so if the AI predicts a patient is going to suffer kidney failure, X-FEMR can point back to the specific data points, like the tokens, that cause that prediction.
Precisely. It highlights the exact parts of the patient's history. So it might show the clinician, hey, I am making this kidney failure prediction heavily based on this specific abnormal A1C blood test from 3 years ago.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, it makes the invisible math completely visible to the doctor.
That is massive for building clinical trust. But what if the AI just doesn't have enough information? Like, what if that A1C test from 3 years ago is just missing? Let's look at paper 9.
Paper 9 is by Qinshu Jin, Felicis Mazude, and their team. They introduce feature sufficiency analysis, or FSA.
Yeah, I look at FSA kind of like a chef checking their pantry. Like before a chef promises you a complex 5-course meal, they check if they actually have the necessary ingredients.
That's a great analogy.
Right. FSA does the same thing for AI. Before the AI promises a medical prediction, it analyzes the partially observed data, the clinical tests it currently has on hand. And if it realizes the data isn't sufficient to make a safe, accurate prediction, it basically raises its hand and tells the doctor, hey, I need you to order an MRI and a blood panel before I can make a call.
It's a critical safeguard. It stops the model from blindly guessing when there's a gap in the patient's record. But, there is another danger in how these models learn, especially when we try to force them to adapt to new hospital environments. And that is the focus of paper 3.
Right. Paper 3 is authored by Fatran, Artin Lani, and team. They explored domain adaptation in frozen backbone language models. And I need some help here. What exactly is a frozen backbone, and what's the warning they uncovered?
Okay, think of a frozen backbone model as a fully trained, specialized doctor. They already know their core medical knowledge. That part of their brain is frozen or locked in.
Got it.
Domain adaptation is trying to teach that doctor how to operate in a brand new hospital with different charting systems. This paper looked at a technique called adversarial alignment, specifically DANN.
And does it work?
Actually, they found it can severely degrade the model's performance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, by brute forcing the model to adapt to the new domain using adversarial training, you end up eroding the pre-existing specialized knowledge it already had.
So the AI basically gets so stressed trying to learn the new hospital's quirks that it forgets its foundational medical training.
Exactly.
Wow. A stark reminder that more aggressive training isn't always better. Okay, so we've established the rules for trust and safety. Let's see how these models actually perform in the live clinical environment, reading scans and mapping out patient futures. Let's look at paper 22.
Paper 22 is authored by 𝗬𝗓, Vladimir Nekrasov, and team. They developed HR 1.5. This is a multimodal large language model built specifically for radiology.
And the headline here is that it actually met the simulated FRCR2B passing standard.
Yes.
And for anyone outside radiology, that is a rigorous clinical examination standard required for human radiologists in the UK. How on earth did an AI pass it?
They achieved this through a highly structured three-stage training pipeline. It started with domain adaptation, moved into contrast to vision training, which helps the AI spot subtle differences in tissues, and finally did visual question answering fine-tuning.
Amazing.
Yeah, it proves that multimodal AI can handle complex, multi-region reporting at a genuine human specialist level.
Sticking with medical imaging, let's bring in paper 7. This is from 𝗬𝗵𝗃, 𝗵𝗽𝗃, and team. They introduced 𝗬𝗃, which stands for Super-Generalist.
𝗬𝗃 is fascinating because it tackles the classic trade-off between being a generalist who understands the whole body and a specialist who hyper-focuses on one organ. So 𝗬𝗃 combines broad vision language learning with what they call specialist spatial priors.
Okay, so what is a spatial prior in this context?
Think of it like handing the AI a set of specialized magnifying glasses. It uses specific anatomical segmenters to actively calibrate its visual attention on chest and abdominal CT scans.
Oh, I see.
So it has the broad, holistic understanding of a generalist, but when it looks at the liver, it swaps to its specialist lens to get precise, localized lesion grounding.
I love that. But I do want to push back on something here. Reading a single CT scan is basically answering a trivia question in a vacuum, right? Real medicine is a saga that takes place over months or years. Can AI actually track the narrative passage of time for a patient?
That is the exact question Paper 10 evaluates. Authored by Yanjun Chen, Zihan Zhu, and team, Paper 10 introduces Long Bed Bench. It's an electronic health record benchmark for long-horizon clinical decision-making. And to address your pushback, the AI struggles.
Really?
Yeah, the authors found that while AI handles explicit timestamps perfectly like it knows a blood test happened on Tuesday at 9 a.m., it genuinely struggles with implicit time inference.
Meaning it struggles to understand how a disease naturally evolves in the weeks between those timestamps.
Exactly. Keeping track of a patient's evolving state over a long clinical horizon remains a major weakness for these models.
But when the AI does successfully map out that long-term trajectory, the results are life-changing. Let's circle back to the hook of our deep dive. Let's look at paper 20.
Yes, paper 20 is authored by Peng Cui, Jitao Wang, and a large multi-center team in China. They introduced HCC-STAR, an AI specifically designed for hepatocellular carcinoma, which is a common type of liver cancer.
And this model went head-to-head with GPT-5 and Gemini 2.5 Pro in risk stratification, and it beat them. But the most staggering part is the survival analysis, right?
Yeah.
Patients adhering to HCC-STAR's personalized recommendations had a hypothetical median survival of 51 months. Traditional clinical guidelines only yield about 29 to 32 months. How is it finding an extra 2 years of life?
It achieves that massive jump by looking past the coarse staging categories that human doctors use. Traditional guidelines might group thousands of patients into stage 2, but HCC-STAR identifies within stage heterogeneity.
Meaning what, exactly?
It finds tiny, subtle variables hidden deep in the electronic medical records that indicate a patient might respond better to a slightly different surgical approach or drug combination. It customizes the care plan to the individual, not the stage.
51 months versus 29. That perfectly illustrates the stakes of this technology. Now, looking at another devastating long-term illness, we have paper 13.
Paper 13 is by Yuxiang Feng, Yongcheng Wang, and team. They discuss a concept called latent drift for forecasting slow-evolving neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's using 3D brain MRIs.
I'm struggling to visualize this a bit. If I take an MRI of an Alzheimer's patient today and I want to predict what their brain looks like in 5 years, why can't the generative AI just draw the future brain?
Because of a phenomenon called identity collapse.
Okay.
If you ask standard AI to generate a future 3D brain, it gets so obsessed with trying to perfectly recreate the complex, high-resolution anatomy of the patient's current brain that it fails to map the subtle decay of tomorrow. It just spits out an image that looks exactly like today's scan.
So how does latent drift fix that?
Instead of trying to synthesize the full-resolution anatomy, latent drift focuses on a compressed, semantic representation of the change itself. It isolates the drift.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, it calculates the mathematical trajectory of the disease in a compressed space, which allows it to accurately forecast how the brain structure will slowly deteriorate over time.
That is a brilliant workaround. All right, let's shift gears. Medicine isn't just data on a screen or pixels in a brain scan. It is highly physical. It's about bodies in motion and the physical interventions of surgery. How is AI adapting to the dynamic physical world? Let's move to paper 17.
Paper 17 is by 𝗂𝗏𝗡𝗏 and Kevin Desai. They built BioModule. This system takes standard 17-joint 3D skeletons, think of like motion capture stick figures, and converts them into actual biomechanical attributes.
How does it do that? If you just have a stick figure, how do you know what the muscles are actually doing?
It uses inverse dynamics. BioModule doesn't just look at the geometry of the movement. It calculates the invisible physical forces. It computes gravity, joint loading forces, and the exact muscle torque required to create that movement.
Wow.
Yeah, it turns visual data into physically interpretable biomechanics.
And if we scale up that kind of motion analysis to millions of people, we get paper 8. Authored by Zhongzi Zhu, Akarshnand, and team, paper 8 introduces Inertia 1. This is a wearable motion foundation model.
The scale here is really impressive. They trained Inertia 1 on over 18.2 million hours of global accelerometer data, like the kind of sensors you have in a smartwatch.
Right.
It is designed for broad activity recognition, but more importantly, for predicting disease symptoms. For example, it could use that wrist movement data to predict the freezing of gait in Parkinson's patients, generalizing across all kinds of different wearable sensors.
Incredible. Now let's take physical motion into the highest stakes environment possible, the operating room. Paper 4.
Paper 4 is by Tianyi Song, 𝗂𝗵𝗎, and team. They discuss TRACK-2 If we connect this to the bigger picture, robotic surgery relies heavily on something called SLAM, that's simultaneous localization and mapping. The robot needs a 3D map of the patient's insides to navigate safely.
But the inside of a patient isn't a static room, right? Tissue deforms, it bleeds, the camera gets noisy. How does the robot keep its map from just breaking?
That's the breakthrough of TRACK-2 It uses a technique called online 3D Gaussian splatting.
Let's break that down. What is Gaussian splatting compared to a normal 3D map?
Okay, a normal 3D map uses a rigid wireframe mesh. When tissue moves or tears, a rigid mesh breaks. Think of Gaussian splatting like painting a 3D room using thousands of tiny overlapping soft blobs of color.
Okay, soft blobs.
Right. Because they are soft and independent, when the tissue deforms, these blobs can quickly shift and re-optimize on the fly. TRACK-2 jointly optimizes the camera pass and this blob map in real time, keeping the surgical navigation stable even when the physical environment is completely chaotic.
That is a massive safety net for robotic surgery. Finally, wrapping up our physical interface section, we have paper 11.
Paper 11 is by Shengxi Liu, Can Li, and team. It highlights 𝗵𝗽𝗶𝗫 for the NLPCC 2026 Shared Task 1. This evaluates AI systems on difficulty-aware medical instructional videos, think first aid or nursing procedures.
And the crucial test here is whether the AI is just cheating by reading the text subtitles on the video to find the answer, or if it is actually engaging in complex visual procedural grounding, right?
Yeah.
Meaning, does the AI truly see and understand the physical actions happening in the video, like how to properly apply a tourniquet? It separates the text readers from the true visual learners.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so we have zoomed from hospital data infrastructure down to the human body in motion. Now, for our final section, let's zoom in even further to the molecular level. This is where AI stops acting like a medical assistant and starts acting like an independent research scientist. Let's look at paper 1.
Paper 1 is authored by Bala Vinatharthan, Shiv Sundram, and team. They introduce fillet filler. This is a domain-specific language for bioinformatics. And the core innovation here is that it separates the core recurrence rules in dynamic programming from the scheduling strategies.
Which is incredibly dense terminology.
It really is.
Let's translate that. Dynamic programming in biology is intensely math-heavy and traditionally very slow. What the team behind 𝗏𝗏𝗏 did is decouple the actual mathematical calculations from when the schedule of how the computer processes them.
And by unbottlenecking that schedule, they made bioinformatics recurrences up to 30 times faster. It vastly accelerates our ability to process biological data at the foundational level.
And harnessing that kind of processing speed brings us to paper 14.
Okay.
Authored by Xiaoran Cheng, Zhongkan Ni, and team, paper 14 discusses GP flow, or generalized Poisson flow. This is a system for generative protein design. Crucially, it generates variable length proteins.
Why is variable length so important?
Because in nature, the optimal length of a protein to solve a specific biological problem is rarely known in advance. Older models force the AI to guess the length before designing the structure.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, GP flow gives the AI the flexibility to design proteins the way biology actually works, organically determining the length as it optimizes the structure.
Building on that structural understanding is paper 19.
Paper 19 is by Chen Tang, Yizhu Wang, and team. They cover 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. This is a multimodal foundation model designed specifically for native structural reasoning across proteins, molecules, and crystals.
So it's basically doing complex chemistry.
Exactly. It treats these structural elements as addressable evidence units, allowing it to logically reason through the chemistry. It achieves state-of-the-art performance across 67 different scientific tasks.
So if we take a step back, we now have AI models processing biological data 30 times faster, designing variable-length proteins, and reasoning through molecular structures at a state-of-the-art level. All of that immense capability culminates in our final study today. Paper 15.
Paper 15 is authored by Ramsha Kamran, 𝗵𝗽𝗶𝗵𝗵, and team. They introduce prompt-to-paper. This is an agentic AI system that runs actual computational biology experiments and then writes the full, formatted scientific manuscript.
And the cost to generate a full research paper, just 31 cents. But I have to push back hard here.
Go for it.
31 cents for a scientific paper. My immediate fear is that this is just going to flood the scientific community with cheap AI-generated junk. We already have enough noise and hallucinated data out there.
That is the immediate valid fear of the entire scientific community. But the authors of paper 15 address this directly. Prompt-to-paper doesn't just sit there and hallucinate text. It relies on a deterministic retrieval augmented generation pipeline.
Meaning it grounds its claims in real data.
Heavily. Every single claim the AI writes is explicitly grounded in a retrieval pool of 60 to 100 real, verified, peer-reviewed papers. Furthermore, it utilizes an autonomous coding agent to run real numerical experiments.
Okay, but who checks the math?
It evaluates its own work using an 8-dimensional automated quality scorer that applies strict explicit penalties for any hallucinations.
So it is rigorously checking its own math and its own citations before it publishes.
Exactly. And the proof is in the peer review. When they had human reviewers grade the resulting AI-generated papers, they scored an average of 7.0 out of 10. For 31 cents, you are getting a solid, verifiable computational biology paper.
That is staggering. Let's take a breath and look at the incredible journey we've just been on. We started with the absolute headache of organizing messy, raw hospital folders in paper 21. We explored how to use federated learning to keep that data secure, and how to reverse engineer black box models to ensure their decisions are explainable to doctors.
Yeah, a lot of ground covered.
We saw multimodal AI passing radiology exams and AI models nearly doubling the median survival times for liver cancer patients by finding hidden variables. We tracked the complex physical biomechanics of robotic surgery using soft overlapping maps. And we ended at the molecular level, with AI acting as an independent computational biologist, designing proteins and writing its own peer-reviewed research for literal pennies.
It really forces a shift in perspective about what the future of medicine looks like. And I want to leave you with this final thought to mull over. If an AI system can now standardize its own data, build a structural reasoning model, evaluate its own experimental findings, and then format and write the publication for 31 cents. Write the publication for 31 cents. What does the role of a human medical researcher actually look like in 10 years? Will your job title inevitably shift from medical researcher to AI research manager?
It's a profound question, and one we are all going to have to answer sooner than we think. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious out there. And remember that ceiling high stack of medical papers we talked about at the beginning. Well, maybe pretty soon the AI will just read them for us. Goodbye.